Hi, my name's Mark, and I started my show up again. I was sick for a couple, well, I had to have heart surgery, and then I kind of forgot about the show. I named it Let's Talk. It's pretty much just me talking with, people that listen, and I like to do that. I like to entertain, I guess, people. I write books. Uh, I write songs. I sing. I do a lot of things to stay busy. Um, and I do comedy. Not like professional. I'm funny, I guess. Um, the books that I write, one of them is my autobiography about my my life, and I have to say I've had a kind of a crazy life from the time I was a kid up until maybe in who knows, probably today. Um, I I have a good life. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania. I'm married for 21 years. I have two stepsons and two grandchildren. Um, and life is okay. It's not perfect, especially with the COVID that went on. Well, I guess it's still going on. I never got it though. Um, and I have epilepsy and my heart problem, so I had to be real careful and get the shots. Uh, so today, what did I want? What I wanted to do was talk about my experience with uh, with the prison system and uh, how at 17 I got myself in all the trouble I got into. Um, I'm going to add a little comedy to it too. We lived in When I was 17, we moved to Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. It was a small town, so, and at 17, with my epilepsy, I started having that when I was 10. And with epilepsy, it was hard to get a job because I was, I guess, a liability to them. It's hard to work when people think if you have a seizure, you're going to get hurt. No, and by all means, I did get hurt a lot of times, but of course, you're gonna have if you have a health problem, you might have some happen at work. So it was hard to get work back then. But luckily enough, my older brother was a chef at a small restaurant in Mount Pocono, and um, I decided to try and get a job there, and I was hired. I was a prep cook and a dishwasher, and I guess a busboy too. That's pretty much the work they give you in the Poconos. All the hotels. And, you know, you're gonna either be a busboy, you're gonna help and be a cook. You're not gonna get no CEO job there. And I didn't have much work experience. I just was, I guess I wasn't good in school. I left school in 10th grade because I couldn't stand school. I went away to school. I went to a place in New York, and I didn't like school because I was, you know, slow learner, and I had a learning disability, so I was made fun of, and with the seizures also, you know, if the school or the kids in school saw one, you know, you can imagine how much I got picked on back then. And what I was saying is, when we moved to Mount Pocono, I finally got that job, and I had met kid there a year older than me. I was 17. He was 18, I guess. And, well, of course he was 18. But, um, we became friends. And that was the biggest mistake I've made in my whole life. But we became friends, and he met my parents. And, you know, my mother was a little suspicious of him, and, but she loved me, and, she wanted me to try, to, well, be cautious. But if I wanted to try to live on my own, I couldn't. I had lived on my own. I had been living with them, with my parents. So, uh, that guy and then myself talked my parents into being able to go live together, get an apartment. And he didn't tell me, but the apartment was a motel room in the Poconos, in Mount Pocono. And it's one of those motels where you pay monthly rent. So, you know, it wasn't, it was normal. And, um, but I was there for 6 nights. And on the sixth night, a tragic thing happened that I still can't get out of my head. Um, on that night, the person, I don't want to mention his name, uh, the person went downstairs. It was one of those motels where it's all outside. There's 2 floors, and he went out of the room and went down to the bottom outside, and I didn't hear anything. I heard a little bit of noise, and I didn't think nothing of it. I thought it was kids. And a few minutes later, he came back into the room, and he had blood on his shirt, and he was holding $50, and it wasn't occurring to me what he had done. And he told me to come with him. And so I went downstairs with him, down onto the walkway. And at the end of the walkway was a room where the screen door was open. And I didn't have a clue what was going on. But I walked with him down to where that screen door was, and something in my head told me don't touch it. Don't even don't go in that room. Don't touch any of the doors or anything. So I didn't, and I looked in, and he had beaten the lady who owned the place. She was 60 years old, and suffocated her and strangled her with an extension cord. And, you know, she was 60 years old. And he took, I guess, $50 in her wedding ring. And he must have sexually assaulted her, because that's how they caught him many, many years later. And it was when I saw her face was beat to smithereens. And she was 60 years old. He didn't need to do that. Anyways, I ran back upstairs to try to get away. I knew he was going to kill me, and I didn't get up there fast enough. He got up there right after I did, and threw me against the wall and put a knife to my throat. And I thought I was going to die. I'm looking at this crazy ass guy who's holding a knife, and his eyes are burning with anger. And I knew what he just did. And it wasn't too long before he was holding a knife to my throat. So I must have had a seizure, because I was on the bed. I woke up to the cops knocking on the door the next morning. And they questioned us, but they couldn't hold us because They couldn't hold us because we knew nothing and they had no evidence on anything yet. Um, so we were both sent our own ways, and I went home. My parents brought me home, and he went wherever he went. I guess he went back to New York City where he came from. And at that time, they would, I guess they'd question me on and off about what had happened, and um, they were focusing everything on him at that time. The whole case, there were nothing on mine, no fingerprints, no anything. And but they couldn't. I guess they couldn't find him, um, even though they tried. And even if they did find him, they had nothing to charge him with, and until they build a full, strong case. Uh, and then what happened a year later? He got a hold of me. I guess I was 18, and he called me, and I didn't even know how he knew my number. And he told me if I didn't confess to what happened, he would kill my family. And I have a sister and two brothers, and my parents, and he was going to kill all of them. And in my head, I had seen what he did, and I was thinking, "Ooh, he's going to do that because he's nuts. He's completely nuts." So I that day, yeah, I think it was that day or maybe the day after, I had my father drive me to the police station, and I did it. You know, I didn't confess. I wasn't supposed to confess in my head to everything I ended up doing. They talk, and it's the truth. Those cops take classes to talk you into deeper trouble, and that's what I did. I was, and I hadn't done anything. Another man had done everything, and they knew that because they were looking for him. And I can remember sitting there, being questioned and knowing that they knew that it wasn't me, and they should have stopped me, but they didn't, and they took in the confession, and I would guess they probably wrote it the way they wanted it to look. And the cops take classes to. Sorry about that. The cops take classes on how to get a confession out of a person, a good confession, and that's what they did with me. Uh, and that day, I was arrested, and I was charged with capital murder, aggravated assault, robbery, burglary one, burglary two, and a theft. And they put me in the county jail. Um, so that's how that happened. I was in big trouble, and uh, really didn't. I don't know if it. Sometimes I can't remember everything that happened during that time because that. But I never forget the hotel. I mean the motel room. I'll never forget that scene. Um, so I sat in the county jail, which was nothing compared to what I was gonna keep doing, going to place after place. I stayed at the county jail for 7 months until I was bailed out, and until the trial would start. And when I was that jail was not too hard. I mean, it was counties, and it was small at that time. The place is a lot bigger now, but the Monroe County Jail was a lot smaller then. And once I got out, things were done and appeals were made. Well, actually, now I'm thinking about it, I had been found when I went to Monroe County Jail, I I was waiting um, for appeals to be made and different things like that. But it all ended up when everything was done. That yeah, when I was nine, in think I was 24, and well, I'm 57 now, so it was like what year was that? It was 1984. Okay, 1984, and I was a little older. That they found me guilty of the aggravated assault. He wanted the top guy, the DA, wanted to get me life, and that didn't work because he didn't have anything. All he had was that stupid confession, and but he got me convicted of aggravated assault and burglary and theft, and I was by that time it was 87. I had appeals that were going through. It takes a long time for appeals to go through, and one was for because I was 17 at the time of the crime, and one was because of my health. At the time, I was epileptic, and the judge didn't care. He was the president judge, and you know he it wasn't accepted. However, that works, and I didn't get those appeals through, and I ended up going to state prison. And the first one I went to was Graterford State Prison. That's where they send you for 4 months to find out where they're going to keep you for the rest of your sentence. And you got to remember, I wasn't smart. I was still a kid, and I wasn't a big guy. And um, I went there in 1987, and I'll tell you something. The people that men in jail with who they don't like is molesters and ones that hurt older women and mm, you know ones that hurt kids. It's and when I went in there, word gets around on what you did to get in there. And when I went in there, I was in there for assaulting a 60-year woman. And luckily enough, I was never hurt. No one ever did nothing to me. And that had to do with because I could sing and play guitar. They called me Elvis in that prison. And that name stuck with me through my whole sentence. And Graterford Prison was rough. It was an old prison, and there were a lot of mean guys there, murderers, a lot of tough criminals. So the best thing was for me to stay out of trouble and keep my head down. And if I had to fight, I had to fight, and that's just the way it was. And then the 4 months was up, and they decided I was going to go to a brand new prison. And it was still at 87. It was called Frackville State Prison. It's another Pennsylvania prison. It was brand new in 87. And that's where I did the rest of the 5 years. It was like 4 years and 6 months that I stayed at that prison. And you got to remember, I didn't do any of this. I made a false confession that in my head was to save my family from that guy. and I just got myself too deep, and I regret it, regret it to this day that I thought that would make things better if I did that. And those police, state troopers, actually, they didn't help with anything. Let me just sit there and confess. You know, if they would have, been truthful and, you know, say that no, you didn't, Mark, you didn't do this. Don't go confessing to what you didn't do. And because nothing, that's why they weren't able to get me a capital murder charge. Well, they gave me the charge, but they didn't convict me of it because I didn't do that. And there was no proof that I did it or no proof of any of the other things. The aggravated assault was because of what I said in the confession. So I spent my time at Frackville State Prison, and I ended up leaving there in 1992, and they sent me to Scranton, PA, and that's where, you know, it's funny. Well, I don't know, it's funny, but it's part of that life. Yeah, when you're in prison, you live a life that starts turning into schedule. You got to be here, you got to be there, you do this, that time, do that. So I knew where to be and what to do, and I made a quarter an hour, 25 cents an hour to hand out mops, and that money went right to my commissary. Commissary, 25 cents. That was crazy. I did a lot of work for 25 cents an hour. Tell you that much. That was a lot of work, and then I have to clean the bathroom for 25 cents. Hell, shit, I would never do that now. That, that was crazy. And but I got out, and they sent me to Catholic Social Services here in Scranton. Well, I don't live in Scranton, but that's where I went. And it was December, and I remember the Super Bowl was on. And when they sent me to prison, it was just about my birthday. I was born in '64, and I went to Gradeford in '87, and it was, it was a rough life, that part of my life, and but I learned to think of it as a learning experience. It sucked. Of course, it sucked. I didn't like living in those places. They're tough places to live. But the one thing I can tell you, don't ever go to prison. But if somebody or you happen to, or whatever, somebody that goes to prison, you have to stay busy. You got to stay busy. You got to do something. You can't just sit on your bed in your cell and, you know, read. That's not, you got to do something to keep your mind going. Like I told you, I left school in 10th grade, so I decided I'd get my GED there. And I got my GED. It's hanging out on my living room wall. And so that's where I graduated. Imagine somebody asking you, where'd you graduate from? And I say, I graduated from Frackville State Prison. That's I keep that to myself. I don't tell them where I got the GED from because they wouldn't want to be friends. And then after that, I decided, why not try to do college? Reading College came to the prison and offered classes, and I took reading and writing. And for the first time ever, going to school, I got a 2.2 average GPA, which was for me was good. And I did a lot of music there. I formed a band while I was there. We had a band, and we played on the holidays, and we played, on a music class they had, and I tutored men who couldn't write or read. I just tried to keep busy, and maybe the time would pass, faster. And there were times where, of course, I missed my family. I would cry sometimes, at Christmas time and the bigger holidays. And at Christmas time, that's the only time you get real food in a prison is when Christmas, maybe Easter. And the Muslims got good food. They had a whole week of good food. The truth is, I joined the Muslim people at one point in my stay just to get good food. I knew nothing about being a Muslim, but I wanted some good food. And then I didn't become a Muslim anymore after that week. I retired, and truthfully, when I was in prison, I didn't want nothing to do with God. God was out of my life. I was a pretty religious kid. I went to communion, and I went to confirmation, and I was an altar boy. At one point, I went to a seminary to become a brother, and then after the brother, become a priest. But at the point of, like my first year in Gradeford, I dropped God. I didn't want nothing to do with that. My mother sent me a Bible in '87, and I put it in a box under my bed and never read it. I still have it, but I never looked at it again until many years after that. And I think back in that time, and it's kind of it's kind of a blur. Some of it, why even would do that. Now, now that I'm older, and I've seen, how that's done, how they talk you deeper and deeper and deeper into trouble, and it's nothing new. If you watch some of the documentaries, uh, where I guess I forget what it was called, where the boy with a learning disability was talked right into saying that he helped his uncle kill somebody. And that's what they do. I don't know if he did or not, but I don't think so. He's too dumb to do that. He wasn't a smart kid. And I wasn't a smart guy. I didn't know that was going to lead me into all that trouble. I was naive. And, I didn't know those things. I led a simple life with, middle class with my parents and my siblings, and that was my life. You know, uh, I listened, to music, and I just led a normal kid life until I met that guy at that restaurant and got in all of that trouble. And like I said, a little bit of this is going to be comedy, and I'll tell you a couple stories about when I was in that place. Um, Gradeford, when I first got there, it was like getting smacked with a rock. I didn't know anything about prison, especially this place. I didn't want to know actually, but they would talk about it when I was in jail, before I went to the big state prison. And I can remember two guards. They were walking me down the hall. I was shackled up on my ankles. That ran to my uh, wrists, and I didn't know. Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck do they think I'm gonna do? Run off, or run away with the all this metal on me? I didn't know what they thought. And I don't know what they thought I would do. I can't run any worse. One of them was a fat guy. I could have ran away from him, but I wouldn't have got far because it's just a hall. So we're walking down. I'm minding my own business, and the fat guy kept talking. He wouldn't shut up, and he kept talking, and I didn't want it. I wasn't, I was checking things out, seeing what's what. And then I remembered who I thought was a really pretty secretary or something kept walking, was walking up the hall. and we getting closer and closer to her, and I'm saying, in my head, I'm saying, man, well, she's probably the last girl I'll ever see. She's very pretty, and I get just just next to them, and girl says, "Welcome to Graterford." You know, welcome to Graterford. That was a guy. Holy hell! And it was a guy. I met him later on during my 4 months. They dress up. I don't know why that is. I guess you know I never did that. Felt I had no need to be dressing up like a girl. I'm not pretty in the first place. Look at this. I wasn't pretty, so I never did that stuff. But it was a crazy place, I tell you. And I had so many cellmates. I mean, it's like a crapshoot. Cellmates, you don't know. It's like Forrest Gump. You don't know what you're gonna get. You know, it's just like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're gonna get, and I didn't know what I was gonna get. That's through all prison, from Graterford to Prattville, and so I remember very well the first guy I had. He was an old guy, and he'd been to lots of prisons, but he was a nice guy. I don't know why he didn't become a grandpa and have a nice job and a steel worker or something. But he was a very nice guy. By the time, you know, by the time I left, we were still good friends. I looked at him like a father guy. We ate together, but I remember one guy who came in, and he walked into the cell and he had tattoos all over the place, and like he just walked through a tattoo machine, and he said he walked in and he says something like Hitler lives, Hitler. What the fuck is this guy doing? And he was big though. I wasn't gonna disagree with him. That's for damn sure, because he was too big for me to try to do anything to. And that's the kind of guy that thinks he's a tough guy, but you know, he gets beat up, a week later. Because there's always someone bigger than you in a prison. Remember that. Don't go, of course, don't go. But there's always someone bigger than you. And you better not, you better just calm down. Don't go in there thinking you're Muhammad Ali, because there's somebody bigger than Muhammad Ali. Anyway, so I had that guy, and I had a guy who was a painter. Uh, that might have been a Frackville, but there was a guy that was an artist. He painted a picture of me and Elvis together playing guitars, and it was a big picture. I have it in this room somewhere. See this room over here? I got it somewhere. But he painted that, and that was a nice picture. And I remember he signed it, and then he painted over the signature. I had gotten in trouble in there, a lot of trouble. I didn't They didn't have my medicine, so I was pissed already because I need my medicine to not have a seizure. It's a simple thing to think. It was simple. But they just thought they can give me my medicine on and off as they please when it comes in. And that's not the way it works. I take a lot of medicine a day. Back then it was just for epilepsy. Now I have something wrong with my heart, so I got to take heart medicine, blood thinners, that kind of thing. But anyways, so this guy, painted the picture, but there was a point when I didn't get my medicine that I got mad at the guard. And I said, I'm like, what the fuck? Why don't you ever have why doesn't this prison ever have medicine? And he's like, well, you can't talk to us like that. I'm the captain of the guards. And I didn't give a fuck who he was the captain of. I didn't care. You don't have my medicine, man. What's the deal? I need my medicine, or I'm gonna fall off the fucking tier. You understand? And he kept getting mouthy with me, and I could only take it for so long, And then he grabbed me by my shirt, by my neck, and threw me into the cell. And he slammed the cell door shut. And it didn't, by then they were cell doors that kind of slide over. And I guess he thought it locked, but it didn't. And anger took over on me. And by that time, also, you were allowed to have a TV, and I had a TV box. And I grabbed the TV box and threw it at him. I hit him. That wasn't that wasn't too good, Mark. It was a dumb thing to do, but at points I did dumb things, and I hit him. And I guess that was a pretty big mistake. I was brought down to the floor where you're gonna see the warden or wherever the hell he was. And now this is a Frackville, so they take me to see this warden fella, and I don't think I think I saw him once when we got there, but in my opinion, a warden should be big and scary. That's my opinion. A warden shouldn't, be some little guy that he has to have a guard watching him. He should be scary. This guy was not. So, I'm thinking, well, whoever this guy is, he's gonna give me big trouble. So I waiting outside, knowing that something's gonna happen, something bad's gonna happen. I'll be, and they usually put you in something called a hole, and it's a separate part of prison, and you're in there for a certain amount of time all by yourself, and in a very small room. So I'm waiting to find out the news, what this guy's gonna do, and I go in there, sit down, and he's taking his own time, wherever he was in the back of his office, and comes out, and he was a shrimpy guy. He was like shrimpy. He was like that guy from Three's Company, the landlord. The guy used to play Barney Fife. He was a little guy. He comes out, sits at his desk, and tries to look real tough, I guess. And the worst thing was he had a lisp. And it's hard for me, I was hoping I wouldn't laugh at this guy, because he had a lisp and he was small and he wasn't scary. So I'm sitting there, I'm hoping I won't, gotta remember, I hoping I won't laugh. And he says, "So, you're a smart mouth, huh? I heard you're giving trouble to my officers." I laughed, kind of. I try not to, but I kind of did. And he said everything he was saying had an S in it. So you're causing trouble with my officers. I think you need to go to downstairs, to the cells downstairs for several weeks. You know, and you gotta if you ever sat in front of this guy who has a list, who talks like a fucking Donald Duck, well, you're gonna laugh. And I did, and that got him madder. And he gave me 70 days on that hole, and that's a long time. That's about 2.5 months almost. And what's in that cell is a bed and a desk, and they give you a book. Only one book. So I read the same book 3 times sitting in there. It was a big book. It was a big book. I don't know what the hell it was, but it was big. And there was a lot of weird stuff that happened in that prison. And the food, worse than hospital food, man. And the cooks thought it was delicious. And they were like, "Oh, try this tonight. It's the same fucking stuff you served a week ago. Everything had soybean in it. Meatloaf, any kind of meat, had soybean. Hamburgers were made with soybean. Anything. They put soybean and oatmeal. You want to make it last." I was like, "Whew, my goodness." Even the oatmeal had no flavor. No, no honey, no nothing with it. You got what you got, and that was it. I was very unhappy with the cooking situation there. Didn't like it, and I didn't like standing in a 2 mile line to get to my food that'd be cold by the time I got there. And you know, truthfully, after a while, probably after the first year, prison life was prison life. I had to live there and I had to stay there and I had to make the best of it, and I did. And like I said, I think it was a learning experience. I also think that it was the start of domino effect. You know, I call that a domino effect because every since then you know things have happened that had to do with that in my life. That if that didn't happen, these other things wouldn't have. And like when I got in trouble and I went to those places, and when Frackville sent me out, I came to Scranton, and Scranton is where I got a pretty good job. And Scranton is, when you come out of prison, it's a rough spot. You're used to prison life after 5 years. You're used to everything. You have a room. You have all the things you need, food. You don't have to buy nothing except what you buy with your commissary money. And I was used to that life after 5 years. And when I came home, I wasn't home when I first came out. I was home for a little bit, and then I got an apartment back in Scranton where they sent me to. But I had a hard time. I didn't know anything. Life skills were hard for me. I didn't know anything about writing checks. I didn't know anything about getting an apartment, paying rent, none of those types of things. How to, where the bills would come from. I was in a daze with a lot of things. And I had I think I had depression from that time. I ended up on a mental floor for a couple, for I think 5 times I was up there. And a lot of times it had to do with my drinking. Uh, and that's what kept me from going nutty. I thought that the drinking make me happy, and I didn't see how it was starting to you know just be the same thing all the time. I would drink, and be depressed and stay depressed and then end up in that hospital. And the last time I did it, I had uh, tried to hurt myself, and I went up there, and they knew I wasn't trying to kill myself. They knew I wasn't doing that. And I was walking down the hall with a nurse, and this is where my life changed. And she told me straight out. She said, "Mark, you're a fucking alcoholic. That's what's wrong with you. You don't want to kill yourself, and that's why you're always up here." And that's when, yeah, I guess that's when I saw the light that is wrong with me. I must just keep drinking because it's always part of the recipe when I ended up there. And she brought me to the doctor that ran the floor, and we talked, and I took some tests, and I ended up that I was an alcoholic. I just wouldn't admit it. And he had me sent to a place a rehab in New York called Match, New York State. And I didn't believe any of that shit. I didn't believe I was an alcoholic. I didn't believe in their 12 steps. I didn't believe in any of the things they said. But I listened. It was going into my head. I was listening to what they were saying. I just wasn't believing what they were saying. And it turned out that there came a point where I heard a person speak who had the same story I did. And, well, not the whole prison part, but a major change in life led them to depression. And uh, so I figured I would get a sponsor and I would try. And I did. And as I told you before, I wanted nothing to do with God. I didn't, God was, I didn't, I shouldn't say it, but he was my enemy. It's not like I believed in the devil or something. I worshiped the devil, but I just didn't want nothing to do with God. And my first sponsor that I had took me to a big cathedral here called St. Peter's. And when he took me in there, it was so big. And I sat in a pew there looking around. I'm saying to myself, oh, I'm so small. This place is huge. God must be here. And and when I thought deeper about it, I figured, God got me through all this. It wasn't me. God was the one that was watching over me. I wouldn't have made it in those prisons. Are you kidding me? Those places are scary, especially Graterford, man. That place was a scary place. And but I made it out, and I made it out of Frackville, and you know I made it. I've made it through a lot of things in life, um, and right now I'm 29 years sober, and uh, I only did it. I only got through that because of God and friends through A. I still go to meetings 3 times a week. Um, and then, as you can see, my life's been a lot of craziness. Um, and one day I was sitting and I was thinking about, I guess my life, and I thought maybe somebody could learn from the things I've been through. So I wrote a book. I learned how to write an ebook, Kindle, Amazon Kindle, and that's called AY9581 Life In and Out, and it's written by Mark Faler. And it sold a lot of, well, to me, it was $300, I think. And it was my first book. I think I've written like 5 now or something. Uh, but that's the best book I wrote. And it tells this story that I kind of went over with you. But it also tells, when I got better and it's basically what my life was before prison, what life was like in prison, and what my life is like out of prison. And I've been out of prison for a long time, since 92, but it still affects you. It's not like just because I'm home, life is all wonderful now. It takes a while to get back to life. Prison life is, you have to adapt to that at first. You have to adapt to it. When you get out, you have to adapt again. And I'd get out and I'd be free and everything would be great. You don't get a job right away. You're not going to get a job as a prisoner, right away. No. And life will be hard to get used to, not having a prison life. Of course, you would have rather been able to do things on your own without guards on your back all the time. But basic life, you had everything you needed. And when you were in prison, But when you get out of prison, nothing's free, and you got to find your own place and all those types of things. And um, it wasn't easy for me. Um, but like I said, I've had a pretty good life. I don't complain about what happened to me. It was part of my time. My time on Earth, and I've learned from it. And people that hear my AA story have learned from it. You know, you have to be careful on a lot of what you're doing in life. Twice, I should have never trusted those troopers, never. And so what it ended up was in 2005. I was mowing my lawn, and up pulled the trooper, up pulled another bunch of state troopers from down there in Monroe County or wherever the hell they came from. They wanted my DNA, and this was 2005, and they wanted my DNA because they had found the guy who did it, and they were bringing him to trial, and they wanted to make sure that no evidence matched my DNA. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because this was many years, that happened in 1982 is when that crime happened. They finally, put him in jail. We're trying to put him in jail in 2005, and they wanted my fucking help to do it. Well, I was upset. But I gave him my DNA, and of course, didn't match nothing. My fingerprints didn't match nothing. And a year went by, and well, actually, in 2005, I went to his arraignment. We hadn't seen each other since that night, and well, actually, since the next day, since '82, and I by that time we were a lot older. I was 41 and he was 40, and I can remember walking in there and seeing him, and he was beat up, man. He didn't have a good life. They found him in prison again in Nevada. And I don't know what the hell they were doing all that time before, but he had done stuff to other women by that time. And, you know, I was the main thing that put him back in jail, and for that, at least for that crime. And I knew everything. I knew where stuff was. I knew what he was going to do and what he did and what I saw when I went to the scene. And when it was all said and done, he got a life sentence, and I guess in case he keeps living, 20 years. So he won't ever see the light of day again. I don't know what prison he's in, but I don't give a fuck anyways. Um, and he's a big, regret of mine that I always had. But in AA, they said, they told through the years that I have to forgive people. And he was the hardest one. I had trouble forgiving. You know, uh, it's a hard thing when a guy in your life had, in, one night switched your whole life around. And that's what happened. So I've forgiven him, you know, through AA. And I had to, because it kind of gnaws at you if you don't just keep moving on. And if I just keep holding anger towards him, who knows? I can't hold anger in me all the time, and there's other people I had to forgive that I'll tell you about at some point. But that was that was a bad, part of life. Uh, and truth is, if I could, you know, I would erase it. But a lot of things would change. I wouldn't have met my wife of 21 years. I wouldn't have met my kids. They're my stepkids, but I met them when they were 9 and 10, and they're 31 and 32 now. I wouldn't have my grandkids. And while I was in '96, I had brain surgery that helped with my epilepsy, and that wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have stopped drinking. I don't think. You know, um, a lot of things got better once I stopped with the craziness, and I'm a lot better a man for that. Um, so this episode is an hour long, and I'm gonna stop it now. And remember the things I said, because if you have children that are in trouble a lot, let them listen to this video. And you know remember remember that our law system screwed up, and I can tell you that from firsthand. you know I wish I could say better about it, but I can't. And the justice system is just as bad. The prison system is just as bad. But it's what we have, and I got stuck in the middle of it, but I came out safe and sound. And today has been a good day. So thanks, everybody. I'm glad we had this talk, and I'll see you another time. 3 episodes a week, and it's going to be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right.